The nonprofit MBA purpose is to provide new business insights and fresh creative ideas for executive directors and their teams that will help them improve their organization. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I'm co-founder and managing partner of Financing Solutions. Financing Solutions has been around for over 12 years and is the leading provider of lines of credit to small nonprofits throughout the United States. Our line of credit program is easy, inexpensive, and costs nothing until used, making it a great cash backup plan for your nonprofit. I think it's the number one reason why we are such a well-known organization for small nonprofits, because they've been dying for this type of product for a long time. It was always very, very hard for a nonprofit to get approved for a line of credit, but now it's not. If you would like to learn more about the program, please visit us at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. And if you decide to apply today, we will even give you a $250 credit on file, or feel free to give us a call at 862-207-4118. Just remember, the time to set up your line of credit is today, not when the emergency actually comes up. And because it doesn't cost anything to set up the line of credit or when it's not being used, it just makes complete sense to have it for emergencies. Today, I'm very excited to be speaking with Lori Jacobwith from Ignited Fundraising. Lori L. Jacobwith is a nationally recognized fundraising culture change expert and master storyteller who has been named one of America's top 25 fundraising experts. She has delivered more than 10,000 coaching and training sessions that have helped nonprofit organizations raise more than $500 million from individual donors. Lori helps staff and board members share their stories powerfully and effectively to cause donors to give more. With a BA in political science and speech communications from the University of Minnesota, Lori also has training from Indiana University Fundraising School and is a longtime member of the Association of Fundraising Professionals. Lori, welcome to today's Nonprofit MBA podcast.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I'm honored to be here. I'm just delighted that you invited me, and I'm excited about our topics.
And I'm glad you accepted too. This is going to be you have such great background. This is a topic that, really has been talked about for years and years. So, we're going to get in today's topic is how to use storytelling to raise more money. And so I'll make a couple of observations that I've seen since I've been in this industry. Storytelling, the idea behind this for nonprofit, has been around for a while, hasn't it?
Oh gosh, storytelling forever. Nonprofits, at least in the last 20, 25 years, I've noticed an upswing in the use of stories, for sure.
Yeah, and now what I'm starting to see, I'm doing more and more podcasts where people are showing the storytelling theme is still there, but it's the vehicle now. Right. So you could do storytelling through video, you could do storytelling through words, you could do storytelling through other media, social media, just all different things. And it seems that it's just, there's a lot of ways to tell your story, isn't there?
There are a lot of ways to tell your story. There are a lot of different stories to share, not just client stories. There's founder stories and board stories and staff stories. And one I'm most passionate about is your money story. Yeah.
Well, have you seen a change since you've been brought in? Like, is it still like from 10 years ago where you have to teach board members, how to do their story, or have they gotten used to it?
I wish I could tell you that every nonprofit I work with has board members who get that really just talking about someone they've met whose life is different from the organization is magical, and it really is magical. Every organization that I work with, even the ones I've worked with for a long time, need to be reminded. The good ones start a board meeting with what I call a mission moment story.
Wow.
only they have the board members rotate, and each month a different board member shares a
Wow.
mission moment story. Others at the other end of the spectrum, uh, I've got board members telling me, I don't know enough about the organization. I can't tell a story. And they're not even realizing they have their own story to tell. And that their job is to be an ambassador of the organization.
What a great idea. I gotta tell you, I just joined the board of of a nonprofit. So this is a first time. I was on the board before, but it wasn't like it was a tennis board, so it wasn't a big deal. But now I've joined a real nonprofit, and I've done so many of these podcasts, you know,
You
that
know
I'm
a lot.
well, I know a lot, but I haven't really kind of implemented them myself. So that there's a big difference between experience and knowledge, right?
Right.
And I thought your idea behind, you know, and so I'm trying to teach as a smaller nonprofit. The first thing I want them to do is we need to do a strategic plan because they don't have a strategic plan. And so I can
Good.
take my business skills and apply it very well
Yeah.
too, But your idea of having each one of the board members go around, not only does it help you with fundraising, right? Not only does it help you keep your board engaged with the purpose and the mission and what you're really about, but it really works on your skills
It
to
totally
tell a
does.
story, right? So it's a really good idea.
Well, and it has, if you do it well, you make sure that you provide a little bit of time, maybe 30 seconds or a minute, for people to give feedback. Where were you inspired? What would you have liked to know more of or less of? So now you're training your board to be coaches of each other, and it's not a scary thing to do. Can I share a quick story about
Please.
how well this has worked? So a number of years ago, the CEO of a Volunteers of America affiliate down in New Orleans, his name is Jim, he made sure that as orientation for board members, they got to meet a client and they got to choose which service area. So some people, an adopted, a dad who was adopted, he chose the adoption program. Someone else chose education. Well, I got to work with them for a little bit, but they also just got really good and passionate because they got to sit down with that person. And now they had a real life human being they're talking about, not something they're reading from a piece of paper. So one board meeting, Jim comes in and he says, I'm looking for one volunteer to come with me to meet a community foundation about a $250,000 request we've put in. I'd love to have you tell your story. 3 hands go up immediately, and they all 3 said, no, we're all coming. We have to go tell our story, our story, our story, because they're different stories. And he's like, they said 1, but okay,
Uh,
I'll bring you all. So Jim does his sort of dog and pony show budget questions, but then each of the board members told their story. And the program officer said, Jim, I'm going to tell the board we have to approve your request 100% here, not because you did a good job, but because I've never seen such passion and knowledge about who you serve by board members.
mm,
They didn't ask for money. They told a story. And their passion for the person was palpable. So they got a $250,000 gift from these 3 board members spending 10 minutes
yeah.
of their life with a human being that they will forever carry in their heart.
Well, and also I can see where you can alleviate board burnout, right? As
Exactly.
well, and so I think your idea, boy, God! I could just think if you could implement one idea and you do this one, it's just going to make a huge difference. It makes me think about too. When you run, like I've been able to run some pretty big companies, and when you're in an executive position, I'm sure it happens with an executive director too. When they're running a big nonprofit, you are doing so much that you sometimes, like in business, you don't talk to the customer anymore,
Yeah.
right? You just, because you're putting out fires, you're dealing with internal issues, you're working strategic plans, so you kind of lose. And in business, you're really they emphasize a lot of time that you should take I remember I worked for Xerox for 8 years for my first job, and the CEO of Xerox would go and travel with us, and it sounds so bad, but they would travel. He'd say 1 day a month he has to go out in the field. You're like, only that's how busy they were,
Right,
that they
right.
couldn't get 1 day. They had to get 1 day a month to go out and see customers. And so I think it's the same thing. I think, having the board, having an executive director, having these people go out and
Hmm.
talk to you forget that's why you're doing this.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's a passion retread, right? Why are we here? We can get mired in budget and forecasting and strategic planning, but at the end of the day, there's a mission and there's a face, a human being, many usually, behind that mission, whether you are advocating for social change, whether you are a human service organization. I've got an organization that does research about the chemicals that are in products that go into the homes and buildings we build. They're a nonprofit. They don't have an end user that's easy to talk about. But I explained to them each one of their board members has used some chemical in their home already that they didn't know was bad, but you've educated them. So now you've got end users sitting on your board. So it's a way to have that mission sort of kind of, just focus you back again on why is it we do our work. But what you said a couple of seconds ago is really important, and it's about the systems. If we don't have a system to orient our staff and our board members and have the folks we walk alongside know that talking to us is important, it falls apart. You've heard of Atomic Habits, the book that James Clear wrote.
Mm-hmm.
So one of his quotes that I quote a lot and I love is, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. If we're not systematizing storytelling, it doesn't emphasize and ambassadorize our work in the way that we want, so that we're not the best kept secret in town.
Well, I love that quote, and it really relates well to what you're talking about too. I mean, listen, prior to this podcast, who would say that we need to systematize, and I'm a process and systematized guy. So, but who would say at a nonprofit we need to systematize our storytelling?
The fundraising person, hopefully. But
Oh, really? You think, yeah, you deal with a lot of them. You think a good fundraising person would say, we need to, do you think that they actually do it? They might say it, but do you think they actually do it?
Well, there's the rub, right?
Uh-huh.
They know they're supposed to, but then they have to get thank you letters out and grant proposals written and donors met with. And while they are looking for stories to tell, they've forgotten that they're the person to systematize the storytelling.
No. Wow.
So I like to say, we're not asking our staff to tell us stories. We're looking for nuggets from our board members, our staff, that we build the story from. So you don't say, tell me a story, because you get deer in the headlights. You say, who can't you get off your mind? Who do you still remember from your first week on the job? Or who did we say no to last week? Or why are you still giving a donor after 20 years? I just asked that of a gentleman, must be in his late 80s, early 90s, making donor calls for a client. He had the most wonderful, delightful stories to share with me about why he was giving. So I've been participating in helping this client for about a month, and I've already collected maybe 20 stories, but it's because I asked the question differently. Because one of the first things I was told when I was brought on is, yeah, we don't have enough stories because we just don't have the time to collect them. Well, it's how you ask the question, and then you get, bombarded with them.
Boy, I'd love to see it must be amazing when you do your training sessions with boards, and I just can imagine that they come out of there with the training after but I'm trying to think of the right, not engaged. I'm trying to think.
Well, that is part of it. They're clear about their roles. So you've heard of the IDS Tower, maybe in downtown Minneapolis. The Mary Tyler Moore hat throwing was outside that building, and it was in her TV show. I was downtown on a Saturday morning a number of years ago, riding up the elevator with a gentleman, and I was going to do a board training for a nonprofit. And he didn't know who I was. I had a briefcase, and he said, yeah, you're here early too. I'm having to go to this stupid training. I don't even want to be here today. And he didn't know who I was, that I was going to be the one. So I walk off and I follow him, and he came up to me with his face just embarrassed.
Yeah.
He said, I am so sorry. I said, no, actually, I am so glad.
Yeah.
Would you tell me at the end of today's session, it was a 3-hour session, if anything shifted for you? And he said, well, I'm ready to resign from the board, so I probably won't have anything change. Well, on the first break, Stephen, he came and he knelt down next to me. I was, digging in my briefcase, and he said, I get my job now.
Mm.
I'm not leaving this board. I'm going to tell my sister's story, and
That's
I'm
great.
going to tell it to everyone I know. And he had tears in his eyes. He said, now I understand why I'm here and what my job is.
I mean, don't you think as I know a lot of our listeners are executive directors, and I'm not trying to insult them. Everyone's on the edge of their seat right now, right? Because I want to see how I'm going to insult them. But don't you kind of feel bad as a leader when you haven't given your people the tools? And I understand you wear multiple hats, but when you have someone like that who joined your organization and they had a really great purpose, and they really feel that it didn't come to fruition, that they weren't able to, don't you kind of feel bad?
Of course. And how I forgive that situation and help it move forward is understanding just what you said. There's a lot of plates, and reminding staff. So here's my one of my mantras that I say when I'm working with boards and executive directors. It is 100% board responsibility to do what we said we would do. And it is 100% staff responsibility to make sure you are able to do what you said you'd do.
Yeah.
So if I'm not providing you with those opportunities to meet someone, or I'm just handing you a piece of paper and expecting you to have some emotional engagement with it, shame on me. However, if you put that system in, like board members speaking at the beginning of a board meeting, then we have a way to overcome any overbooked time in my day, because now we're providing the exact right opportunity for board members, remembering that this organization is not their first, second, or even third priority. It might be their family, their job, and their faith come before all of that, or their community, or they're on a hockey team, or whatever it is. So I forgive and give tools for people to engage together and better connect around how do we want to show up in our community.
Yeah, and to be fair to our listeners too, listen, I'll relate this in a different way, and that is, when I first started my first company, I was a horrible manager, just horrible, and it really bothered me, and so I really worked hard on it. I really worked hard on becoming a better manager, a better leader. And, through a lot of work and a lot of help with other people, a lot of reading and coaching and whatever, I got good at it. And so I think, it's the same thing with storytelling, which I think is, my guess, if your nonprofit could do one thing, and that's really a job of a great organization, if you need to focus on one or two things that you do really, really, really well and be great at it, I think storytelling is that one of those things. What do you
I
think?
do too.
Yeah.
The way I say it is to put a face on my impact as a supporter.
Yeah.
Because fundraising is about fulfilling the aspirations of our supporters.
Right.
When I want to make an impact, that's why I'm supporting you.
Yeah.
When I've stopped giving, probably you as well, is when I don't feel so connected.
Yeah, there's a really great author. He passed away, but his name is Stephen Ambrose, and Stephen Ambrose wrote Lewis and Clark. He wrote a whole bunch of other books, but he said, how can you not be interested in history?
Yeah.
He said history is about people. And
Right.
people are the most interesting thing in the world. And I think you can relate that to what we're
Right.
talking about. And that is a nonprofit, in most cases, is always about people.
It's always about people.
And
Whether you actually have programs and services, direct service or not, there is an end user that is benefiting. Clean water, there's
yes,
an end user.
yes,
Clean air, clean, whatever it is, there is someone, a person, a child, a family. The quote is, one is a story, two or more is a statistic, and I can't relate to a statistic. So talk about one person. That's all.
So, what are the key ingredients of a great story?
I love that you asked this question. First is to have some details. 17 is different than 70. So how old is this person? How tall are they? What did they look like when they walked through your door? How did they get there? And jot those down. And then what are the things that you can measure that are different for this person because of your work? I can choose from over 600 different products to make my home or my office safe because of your work. Then, so measurable, exact results is the thing that's easy to talk about. A home, a job, they're sober, whatever it is, they have an education. The transformations are where we go missing a little bit. Transformations can't be measured, but they're things like felt safe for the first time, looked me in the eye and actually had words to put to their excitement or to their hopefulness. So talking about transformations. And then what I like to have you do is pay attention to the word choices that cause me to feel something. So I can tell you that someone has arthritis so badly that they're in pain all the time, or I can tell you that those gnarled hands can't hold a hairbrush to brush her daughter's hair in the morning.
Mm.
Which one causes you to feel something a little bit differently? So it takes a little more time. And then the last step that I use is to put it into any sort of framework that tells me what was life like before, what's life like today, and where are they headed, and share it everywhere. So share it on TikTok or share it on your homepage, put it on YouTube, put it in an appeal letter. You can share the same story over and over, different pieces of it. I have shared some stories for years and had people call back or email and say, so how's she doing now? Is she still needing our help? So it's okay to reuse a story, especially if we've gotten to know that person, or if it's my story, the end user out there, you can say, so how are you now doing with the fact that we've cleaned up the 3 lakes in your neighborhood or the rivers, and invite those stories back. But that's the framework I use. Now, there's one piece I didn't talk about that is for what I call advanced storytellers. You put a face on my impact, but you also tell me what it takes financially to do that per day, per week, per month. And you let me know that today it'll take, notice it will take, we don't need anything. It will take $1.7 million to say yes to everyone who's going to walk through our doors this year. And it's only March 2nd. And so we've raised about $230,000. So we've got some work to do. But for $63 for the entire year, this child at an orphanage in Bangladesh has all their basic needs met. $63 for the entire year. And let me tell you a little bit about Anisha. So you tell me this money part of the story without asking, but it's just one of the facts that's woven into the framework of the story.
I would have done it in reverse. Is that wrong? I mean, I would have.
No, anywhere
Oh,
you'd
okay.
like to put it in.
I would have talked about Anisha first, and
You
then
can.
get into how that. So I always thought I could be a great storyteller. So
Well, you are. You have a podcast.
Yeah, well, it's true. Yeah, I let my guests talk, but yeah. Um, how do you think the medium of video and social media, more video, like, I think you're training people to how to talk about stories. I think the medium of video is a little bit more like a presentation, so maybe it's a little different.
Well, so for a testimonial story, I'm just doing a training right now, and I'm teaching this piece that we just talked about. What is the framework of a story? And the last session in this training series will be, how do you equate that exact same framework when you have someone telling their own story? It's the same. How did I get here? What did I feel? I was ashamed. I was, whatever it was, abused by my spouse, or I lost my job. I didn't want anyone to know. What happened is someone listened to me and gave me structure and held me accountable. And now we can start to measure and hear. And so I got to apply for 3 jobs. I got one. I'm now getting a steady paycheck. I feel proud versus the shame that I felt before. And I know I'm on a different trajectory. I know the end of my story hasn't been finished yet, but I know it will have a different ending. And what the organization tells me is it takes about $750 to train the staff person who walked alongside me for the 3 weeks or 6 weeks or 6 months of that program. So they can include that the whole, same structure. What we don't often do is train our folks to tell a story. We expect them to know how to tell a story. And unless you know how to tell a good story yourself, you can't coach someone and pull out of them that moving, inspiring story.
Well, that's actually a secondary concern for me, because I think I would be, like in my case, I would be great at telling a story. That is a natural thing for me. But you also got to provide them the information. Mm-hmm. So if we don't, like, I'm thinking about this nonprofit I belong to right now. They get it's for kids that can't afford a Halloween costume. So we hook up people have Halloween costumes to people who don't have Halloween costumes. And but I mean, I just joined the board. I mean, the first thing I'm going to do when I get into, before our next board meeting is I'm going to say, I want to really can you facilitate me talking to a parent of a kid who got it, and so I can ask them questions. But I shouldn't, as a board member, have to go out and do that, right? Right. Really, I think every meeting, you should be providing your people, your board, and your staff with, you get just videos of, what your organization has done for the people while they're talking about it, because people they're pretty successful in a, usually on the board level, in their careers. They probably have had to tell stories in their lives.
Hopefully, and won't be too shy to retell
Correct.
something that they've learned.
Yeah.
The structure around practicing at a board meeting builds in some muscle memory, if you will. I could take a story that most people tell and tell it back to them and move and inspire them more than they had already been moved and inspired, because I've practiced so long.
Yeah.
So yes, there's a responsibility for staff, and remember, their plate is full and they're not thinking that you need that yet. Maybe they're thinking you need the names and phone numbers of all the other board members and the dates of the meetings. They're forgetting the mission is the through line. So good for you, Stephen, that you're going to be the one to say, all right, how are we going to get our mission, the face of our mission, into our board meetings for 3 to 5 minutes each week or each month?
Yeah.
That will be great. And it'll change the systems around how that organization communicates.
So when you do your training for the boards, in this case, is it, well, you told us already, you did this one training was 3 hours long, right? How do you usually stay? How does it go?
So all kinds of different ways.
Oh,
90 minutes is a good amount to get started with a board to learn. And I teach them the 7 ways they can participate in fund development and not have to ask for money. And one of them is to tell a people story. One of them is to tell the money story. And when we've got our 90 minutes, they break up into twos, even on Zoom, because we can use the breakout rooms, and they go tell a story of someone they've met. Or if they don't have that, I ask them to tell the story about why they joined the board. So even in that 90 minutes, they've learned it's important to give, it's important to thank, it's important to be an ambassador, it's important to invite people to attend things, it's important to hold ourselves accountable, it's important to tell a story about a person and about our money story, and they get time to practice it.
mhm.
So it's anywhere from that, initial 90 minutes to I do action planning sessions where we're actually doing some of that. It's like strategic planning, but it's a little bit faster going. We'll take a whole day to do that, or we'll take 2 afternoons to do that. And in there is the storytelling training. It's embedded right into it.
What has been the reaction of people um, that you've seen on a consistent basis after they get the training? What do you hear the most often?
I didn't realize or remember how powerful just telling a story is to getting people connected to our mission. I've
Uh,
forgotten that. Now I get my job. Now I know what we should be doing. It's like a light bulb goes off. And the good news is the way I plan the sessions, it's within the first 10, 15, 20 minutes that they get it. So now they listen to everything else that we're going to
yeah,
do at a whole different level.
yeah. Now, there's the aha moment, which is I really get this storytelling, but then there's the actual execution,
Mm-hmm.
right? So is it typical for you to follow up with them in a couple of months and see how they're doing? And you know,
Some,
I
some.
I would think that like if I was me, I'd be like so excited. I'd be like, oh yes, I get it. I get the tools. And then I go to do it. I'm like, oh man, this is a lot harder. And I could say, well, I need to practice and stuff like that. But um, I could see where you have this all excitement, and then it kind of
Wait,
it,
it fades away.
yeah, it gets hard. Well, I wouldn't even say the excitement fades away. It's the, oh, this is harder than I thought it was going to be scenario.
Usually the harder isn't the word, it's the, oh, I forgot to do that
Oh,
part.
yeah, yeah.
you know so one of the things that I like to leave behind is an agreement, some sort of menu of ways that I will hold myself accountable as a staff person or a board member. But there are some organizations, one in particular, I've been back there every year for 20 years,
Oh,
and we do a reminder session because there's always new board members, and some of them have been through 8 of my reminder sessions. So my job is to keep it fresh
yeah.
and to keep it fun. But they've raised, 25-30 million dollars using the tools that I've taught them.
So, I mean, honestly, the whatever it is that you charge, it's a drop in the bucket compared to what they're raising, right?
I've had someone say recently, she said, what's the ROI? I said, someone explained to me once that it was like 0.001, the investment that they made compared to what they
Yeah,
raised. It,
yeah,
I do, I tell people when I was a little girl, I wanted to be governor of Minnesota because my parents volunteered in the community and they did all kinds of things. And we did political leafleting. And I thought I wanted to help as many people as possible. And I could help everyone in Minnesota if I was the governor, right? Well, I got to work for the governor when I was in my 30s, and I decided I didn't want that job. But I learned that telling a story, putting a face on impact is what causes people to pay attention. So fast forward, I get to help people all over the world. I didn't have the right job. I had the right concept of what I wanted to be when I grew up. And here I am. I get to help people tell
Well,
powerful stories.
yeah, it'd be, I shouldn't bring politics to this, but if you watched President Biden's State of the Union last night, he uses storytelling a lot to kind of, it's always been a natural thing that he uses. And, it's interesting when he does it, because I think not only does he have he shows me, I not only does it tell a good story, but it helps remind me that he quite honestly, I'm going to say it. I think he's a very decent man, regardless if you think he's doing a good job or not.
Right.
You can't say that he's not a decent man.
Yeah.
And that,
He's a human being with a big heart.
I
And
agree.
it shows in his storytelling.
Yeah, and he's become a little bit more bigger deal to me because people always, and this is maybe a good segue for this podcast, in that you want people who are leaders that can relate to what you're going through,
Right.
right? And I lost my wife last year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, unexpectedly, and so I remember early on when I had not heard. Someone told me about President Biden lost his wife,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of a crazy story. I listened to an NPR broadcast about it that he was on, and it was way before he became president. And he was talking about him. He was he still had two sons.
Yeah.
And he was a senator, and he was commuting back and forth on the Amtrak to DC. And this is a side note. I decided early after my wife passed to take my 13-year-old to DC on the Amtrak because of him.
Wow.
I had never been on the Amtrak, and I thought, this would be nice. This would be the first time my son and I had ever been away together, just us two on a trip, because my wife and I and all of us would travel a lot,
right?
And but it was because of him. But what it relates to is, again, the idea about storytelling.
Yeah.
Right.
Humanizing everyday actions that have us feel connected to other human beings. That's what storytelling is all about, right? We've got the situation that's difficult going on in the Ukraine, and I can hear a news story about it, but when I see pictures and I hear people interviewed who tell their experience, their story, my heart breaks in a whole different way.
Right. And it gets you away from the idea of, the person's just a robot. Yeah. It's a real life person. Listen, my opinion, Putin's getting killed. I mean, he's getting destroyed with a PR, and PR is all, that's part of warfare too. But, and I mainly watch one or two channels. So, I don't know what some of the other channels are doing, but I think he's getting, the whole world is uniting against him, and it's just a new way of warfare that we can potentially, could we resolve this conflict? Not resolve is not the right word, but end it early because of the press that's involved.
Well, it's back to your point earlier with social media, the speed of communication.
Yeah.
Everyone is a reporter.
Yeah.
Everyone is consuming more information. And our job really is to compete for we're competing for attention through the stories that we tell.
Yeah, so you're right in that with all the information that's out there, hey, listen, it's not about providing people with more information anymore. You better provide them with good information, and it's got to be compelling.
Right.
It's the term. I say this to my sons. I say, you have all the information that you need. Now it's about how do you use it?
Yes.
All
What
right.
actions do you take
That's
based on
right.
what you already know? Yeah.
Because it's not that. It used to be when I was younger, you had to go to a library to get the information.
And look in the encyclopedia.
Yeah. Now
Now we carry it with us on our
just
phone.
amazing how much now I use, how much I use YouTube to fix everything,
Right. Same here.
really, and it meets I'm a very visual person. So for me, it's better than reading. So, listen, it's all good stuff. It was a really great podcast today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for letting me be on my soapbox a little bit about being messengers who are ambassadors.
Yeah.
And let's wish storytelling success to all your listeners.
Well, I've learned a lot. So I'd like to thank so very much Lori L. Jacobwith from Ignited Fundraising for coming on today's podcast. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And if you like today's podcast, like I know many people really have, please give us a 5-star review on your podcasting app to help us get the word out. And of course, if you're looking for a line of credit for your nonprofit, you can call us at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. Lori, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, thanks for asking. They can visit my website, ignitedfundraising.com, or they can check out my Instagram account, Caring Truth Teller, or they can find me, Lori Jacobwith, on LinkedIn.
Great, thanks. And for all of the listeners out there, I want to thank you all for making the world a better place. Boy, we thought war is old, right?
Yeah.
It's, and I think that I'm hearing that from so many people are like, oh man, aren't we past this?
Right.
And, we're really not, at least with big countries anyway. But you guys are out there, you're doing all the hard work. I know that Lori and we're trying to do our parts too. Every day it's up to all of us, but I want to thank you all for doing all the work that you're doing. However, the weather is about to change and it's going to get nicer out. You need to take a step back, take care of yourself first. You're not good to anybody if you're burnt out. So take good care of yourself, and then your cause will be the beneficiary of all that. So get out there, smell the roses as soon as they come around, and enjoy being a person again. Everybody have a fantastic day. Thank you for listening to today's Nonprofit MBA podcast.